I don't usually make NBA videos. I've only been a fan for a couple years now, and in general, I don't know nearly as much as I'm talking about in comparison to football. But sometimes something so big happens, it's impossible to ignore. On February 1st, 2025, the Dallas Mavericks traded Luka Doncic to the LA Lakers. You, of course, didn't need me to break that news to you. This trade has been addressed and talked about by everyone and their grandma. Even Moist Critical made a video on it, and I didn't even know he knew what a sports ball was unless it was in a video game where you ride around pushing large balls into nets while hearing your teammates scream slurs at the top of their lungs in voice chat.
Cat's gonna go. Jordan, for real.
Instead of breaking down film or over talking about the basketball of all of this, I think I'm more suited discussing this from the ownership standpoint, the actual words that are being said, especially from this interview right here. Before we get into it, here are a few things I do want to say beforehand to set the scene, especially about these two players mainly involved in the trade and what's actually transpired, just to show how big of a fuck up this was from Dallas. Also to establish how much of a dunderhead Nico Harrison is. Now sit back, relax. I've segmented this video into different talking points, so skip around at your leisure. And let's begin with Luka. How do I put this in a non-exaggerative way? Luka Doncic is the basketball version of Jesus. Seriously though, Luka is one of the main reasons that I personally started watching basketball. Anyone who barely knows anything about the sport can watch this dude's highlights and realize that this is how the good Lord intended basketball to be played. Even if you don't know a basket from a ball, it's obvious that Luka is extremely talented. While his defense isn't that of a superstar, he can have clamps when he needs to, and when it's crunch time, his shot and form is pure. He has some of the best handles in the league. He is, and this is going to piss some people off, he is as good of a passer as prime LeBron, if not better. Most importantly, Luka has that thing about him, that clutch gene, that superstar gene, the I'm a winner gene, whatever kind of genes you want to wear. He's the kind of guy that you mortgage a major asset away to have on your team, which is exactly what the Lakers did when they traded away Anthony Davis. Since this trade, the Lakers are left with no genuine big men on the roster aside from LeBron, who's more of a jack of all trades. Some potential, sure, but no actual experienced big men. Aside from just that, Anthony Davis is an all-NBA player with straps on defense who's in the middle of a fantastic season. This was an incredibly important part of this Lakers team. Shipping off Davis mid-season is nothing light, but what it does show is how important Luka Doncic is as a player. Doncic was supposed to be one of the few untouchables in the league, someone that no GM in their right mind would trade for anything. But when the opportunity arises to acquire one of these untouchables, it's something you have to do. As long as Luka was on the Mavericks rosters, they were going to be contenders basically year after year. Now that some of the groundwork has been established, I want to break this press conference down from the Mavericks GM, Nico Harrison. Accompanying him is Jason Kidd, the head coach.
What got you guys to the point where you felt like moving on from Luka was in the best interest of the franchise?
Yeah, I think it wasn't really like a point. I think it was like, how do we make our team better? There's some unique things about his contract that we had to pay attention to. You know, there's other teams that were loading up, you know, that he was going to be able to decide, make his own decision at some point of whether he wants to be here or not, whether we want to supermax him or not, or whether he wants to opt out. So I think we had to take all that into consideration and feel like we got out in front of what could have been a tumultuous summer.
This is where the ludicrous nature of this press conference really kicks off. Harrison was asked what point he got in which he felt it was best moving on from Luka. He expressed mainly contract concerns, bringing up his Supermax contract coming up. He states that the openness of the decision for this contract, both from the perspective of Luka as well as the Mavericks themselves, addressing it as a potential issue for the Mavericks going forward.
Nico, did you have any indication from him or his representation that he was going to opt out or not take the extension or anything like that?
No, not at all. Not at all. Nothing verbally that would lead me to believe that.
Then he just openly admits that he had no reason to believe Luka wouldn't want the contract with the Mavericks, almost entirely diminishing everything he said on the last point? Luka has said on multiple occasions, especially after this trade happened, that he wanted to be a Maverick for life. These statements essentially mean the Mavericks were the ones not wanting to give Luka the contract.
Why would the Supermax be a difficult decision on your end?
Oh, no, it's not a matter of it being a difficult decision. It's a matter of, once you put that out there, they accept or they don't, and at that point you're on the clock.
And then when asked about why the contract would be so difficult, he says it isn't a difficult decision, again diminishing the point I just made from the last question. But he does say it is instead a matter of whether or not that contract would be accepted, which we, again, just clarified Luka would absolutely have accepted. So within the first 3 questions of this press conference, Nico has contradicted his own statements 3 different times and left no obvious reason for why this trade took place. Moving on to a different point, but still very idiotic in my opinion, Nico says that he had no discussions with any other teams about potentially trading Luka, which may have been the dumbest aspect of this whole trade.
Did you have discussions with any other teams besides the Lakers about this deal?
No, and I'd like to give Rob Pelinka a lot of credit.
Leaving a trade this valuable with a player of this caliber to only one team offering is asinine to me. If you're going to trade Luka Doncic, you make it known that he's on the market to literally every team in the league. Therefore, a bidding war can begin, and you can get offers of all kinds from literally every other team in the league. Limiting this trade to one team means you are limiting the potential return for compensation for a trade with Luka. Maybe the Lakers have the absolute best offer anyone in the league would give. I don't know, but I do seriously doubt that. Regardless, me or Nico will never know what the highest value trade could have been because he forced himself and his team into a box.
And, we kept it between us. We had to keep it tight. J. Kidd didn't know about it, but J. Kidd and I are aligned, and we talk about archetypes, and we talk about the culture that we want to create. So I know the type of players that he likes without actually talking to him. Hey, would you like, so I know that. And J. Kidd coached them when they won a championship. So I think when you're aligned with your coach like that, I know the type of players that he likes. And so I felt good about it making sense to where we're trying to go.
This is where some of the ego tripping and obliviousness really starts to shine through. We see even more of it later, but this is the start. First of all, I don't care if you're the GM and it's your decision. It will always be moronic to me not to discuss specific player personnel acquisitions with the head coach of the team. And I don't care if we're talking about basketball, football, lacrosse, ice hockey, underwater basket weaving competitions. It is nothing but egotistical and arrogant to want to make these decisions entirely on your own. And Nico acting as if he and Kidd have some sort of telepathy and he just knows exactly what he wants is completely dismissed by the fact that he did not discuss a trade of this magnitude with the head coach in the first place. We just established that the communication is poor. Why would I or anyone trust that you know what Kidd wants on this team? You're aligned with your coach, yet you can't trust him enough to talk about this trade before it happens.
Bar, this feels like a move that you absolutely have to be right about. There can't be any doubt in your mind when you pull the trigger on it. I'm just curious, what convinced both of you that you will not be wrong?
Well, let's be clear. I'm the one making the decision, and Jay's supportive of it, so it's me. I don't do anything that's scary. I think everything that we do, we put a lot of work into it. We study it, and we restudy it, and we go back, and I understand the magnitude of it. So the easiest thing for me to do is do nothing, and everyone would praise me for doing nothing. But we really believe in it, and time will tell if I'm right.
See, this is just pissing me off. This is the ego I was talking about, having to make sure everyone knows he's the head honcho, making decisions. Aside from that, it's even more evident showing that maybe Nico and Kidd aren't as aligned as he thinks they are. The rest of his statements are just kind of stupid in my opinion. I don't know if it's a sluggish, traumatized child attitude.
I don't do anything that's scary.
Or if the words he's saying are just dumb, but I don't feel the conviction behind his words whatsoever. No one would praise you for doing nothing unless the nothing led to team success. He's semi-correct in saying doing nothing is easiest, but sometimes that is the correct move. Not saying that the Mavericks should never have tried to make any move happen to make their team better. It's just kind of ridiculous to start by trading away one of the best players in the league.
Are you implying that Luka no longer fit that culture?
No, listen, one thing about me, I'm not going to talk bad about any players. Like that's not going to do, us or me any good. I just say there's levels to it. And there's people that fit the culture and there's people that come in and add to the culture. And those are two distinct things. And I believe the people that were coming in are adding to the culture.
No, you have to own this more if it's the case. If the main discrepancy between wanting to retain Luka or to trade him off is not matching the culture or where you want it to go, you have to sell that harder. If you ask me, someone who isn't a GM but has fucking eyes and a brain that works, the difference between the caliber of player that Luka is in comparison to culture is not a close argument. Let me put it this way, hopefully I can clarify what I just said. If talent and culture are on a 1 to 100 scale, and Luka is at 100 in terms of talent, but his culture match is 50 out of 100, I'd say Anthony Davis is 80 compared to 70. 80 ability versus 70 culture. In my opinion, you have to value the talent way more than the culture match. Those numbers I gave were arbitrary and not thought out. It was just for example. I'd say there's honestly even bigger number discrepancy between those two players overall. Just trying to, clarify what I meant. However, I would argue that saying Anthony Davis adds more to the culture is tough to sell anyways because we don't know that. We do know that Luka is one of the best players in the entire league, and we know that Anthony Davis, I respect his game. He's a good basketball player. He is not one of the best players in the entire league.
What would you just say to fans who are frustrated about this move?
I'm sorry they're frustrated, but it's something that we believe in as an organization. It's going to make us better. We believe that it sets us up to win not only now but also in the future. And when we win, I believe the frustration will go away.
Oh, so now it's we. A minute ago, it was I. It was my decision, but all of a sudden, it's something that the entire program took part in. There's a difference between the rest of the program supporting you and then believing the same things you do. You would have better clarification about whether everyone believes in the move if you told everyone about the move beforehand. Now, I do want to break away from the press conference and get back to general discussions on this, but I think it would be unfair not to show what Jason Kidd has to say about this because he does show support for this decision. But keep in mind, like I said a minute ago, support isn't necessarily the same as believing in or having the exact same mind. It just means I support you.
Jason, what is your reaction to this trade?
Yeah, I think it's, it's something that, as Nico's brought up, we are aligned, right? And so just understanding Luka, when I first came here, excited about the opportunity to coach an upcoming star and who became a mega star. And I was just blessed to have that opportunity to coach him. But when you look at the vision of the team and what Nico wants to build, I truly support that and truly believe that the players that we're getting are the ones that can help us achieve that, and that's to win a championship.
I'm not a body language interpreter, and I don't want to try to be. I don't want to judge in areas I don't know, so I'm going to be careful here. What I'll start with on Kidd's words about the trade is we need to understand that this is basically what he has to say. If he would have said anything else on the contrary, it would mean he would no longer be a Maverick head coach. Whether that's his decision and wanting to leave, or that's the Mavericks saying, hey, you're not aligned with our thoughts and what we believe in, you got to go. Aside from that, he starts off talking about Luka and his history with him as a player, mentioning his rise to being a megastar. I also want to point out, despite the seemingly heartfelt nature of Kidd's words, he doesn't necessarily speak on his thoughts on the trade and losing Luka, but rather defers to supporting Nico's vision of the team and the new players. Maybe I'm grasping at straws here, call me out for it if you want, but at no point does he give a firm answer on believing that trading Luka was a good move here. He just says he believes in the vision of focusing on defense and that Anthony Davis is a good basketball player. Two, fine and obvious things that you can have without trading away Luka or believing in that.
What do you envision? I mean, does AD start at the 4 for you guys? Is he a 5? How do you envision that working?
I gotta be honest with you. Right now, I'm only focused on today's game. Right? Like
You're not being honest with me.
I am. I got a list of players I got to tell you who are out, and we got a game today, right? And so, as we go down the line, I'll be able to answer that question for you. And I'm not avoiding that question. Like as you see the rosters built, he probably will start at the 4, but I can give you more concrete information as we go forward.
This is also another reason why maybe discussing this with the coach beforehand would have been better. That way he's prepared and knows exactly how to use AD right out of the gate instead of winging it for now until he's ready, which kind of goes against the whole win now talk that's been discussed. That might seem nitpicky, but it really does seem relevant to me.
Do you have an idea about AD's availability in terms of the abdominal issue that he's dealing with now?
No, we'll learn. One, it wasn't significant, and 2, we'll learn more as we go through the physicals.
This is another point more about the actual acquisition of AD. In his 13-season career, Anthony Davis has only 3 seasons with 70-plus games. I'd also like to point out that throughout this whole presser, Nico has discussed this being a win-now move as well as a long-term move.
You mentioned you think this will work in the short term and the long term. Short term makes great sense. How do you see this working out well for the organization in the long term?
Well, I think the long term is the time frame. I think he fits our time frame. If you pair him with Kyrie and the rest of the guys, he fits right along with our time frame to win now and win in the future. And the future to me is 3-4 years from now. The future 10 years from now, I don't know. I don't think they probably bury me and Jay by then. Or we bear ourselves.
Yes.
When asked about how this makes sense being a long-term move, he basically starts discussing yet again how this is a short-term move, realizes it, and then just says, and win in the future. Dude, what are you talking about? Did you prepare for this even a little bit? Since the general manager can't handle it, let me answer the question about the long term versus the short term. For short term, I struggle seeing the Mavs making the playoffs, although I will admit I've changed the script a bit as I was writing it because yesterday, at the time of recording, the Mavericks beat the Celtics, which was a pretty good win for them. Regardless, I don't see some deep playoff run happening or anything better than what Luka has had over the last few years. For the future, which Nico is talking about within 2 to 4 years, you have an aging Kyrie, an aging Clay, a non-consistently healthy Anthony Davis. We'll see what happens with Max Christie, but I don't see him being the future. They have 3 first-round picks and 1 second for the next 4 years, which I doubt will be top-of-the-line lottery picks. And last I saw, they do have top 10 in salary cap, which is good for their benefit in terms of the future of this team. Overall, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like the Mavs are going to fall off a cliff and that everything is bleak and dark and they have no future. I just struggle seeing this as a move to make them better. And when you trade away a player like Luka, the minimum is improvement or else the decision is a flop. If this ends up being a push within the next 2 to 3 years, it isn't really a push. It's still going to be seen as a bad idea. It's still going to be seen as a bad move. That doesn't change anything, especially considering what they did get in return, which, as I mentioned, Anthony Davis and what was it, like a 2045 first round pick or something like that. I've also been seeing some discussions about how one of the reasons that the Mavericks wanted to move on from Luka was weight concerns. I don't know. He looks pretty in shape to me for the most part, and he's still playing really good basketball. And for someone that isn't in shape, he surely found a way to get 5 All-NBA seasons. I don't know if I really buy into that. I talked about the culture aspect, the culture fit as well, and the direction that the Mavericks want to go to. I talked about that a little bit ago, and that is now being talked about as one of the reasons they wanted to get rid of Luka. Again, I don't think that matches the ability that he has and the talent he has as a player, but regardless, he's had his, small share of struggles in terms of that category. But when it comes to the fans and what the people like and the team likes, the players on the team, no one loves Luka more than the Mavericks, except for Nico Harrison, obviously. So what do I want my main point to be and come across to anyone that watches this video? What's the important aspect of this that you should take away, in my opinion? Well, overall, like I said, I don't think that the Mavericks all of a sudden are going to be one of the worst teams in the league for trading Luka. And I also don't know if, the Lakers are immediately championship contenders. They're easily contenders because they were already contenders before that. But I don't think they're, immediately seen as the number one team in the league. I also don't think the Mavericks got better. If anyone got better, it was indeed the Lakers that got better through this whole trade. They'll struggle a little bit with the defense aspect of things, but this is a perfect fit for the short term and the long term for them, unlike anything that Nico Harrison had to say about the Mavericks and this trade overall. Anyways, I hope this works out for the Mavericks minus Nico Harrison. I hope it works out for Luka. I hope it works out for the Lakers. Maybe, Luka can be adopted by LeBron and he can have another kid that he's playing with, considering that Luka just bought a house in Dallas. And I don't know what he's going to do with that now, if he's just going to keep it or sell it or whatever. Just rent it out. You could rent it out to me, Luka. I don't mind. Anyways, that's going to do it. Bye.
I don't do anything that's scary.